So I was taking a look at the OSI model, and I was reading over what each layer does, and I find really technical explanations of what they're doing, which I can wrap my head around for the most part, but what I'd really like to do is kind of parallel it to something.
Okay. Well, okay, the OSI model is kind of one of those foundational things that we build computer networking off of. It was established by the International Organization of Standardization. And the purpose for it was to kind of, in the name, standardize how computer systems talk to each other.
Yeah, I saw like in my reading in the early days, there was competing models.
Correct. So imagine you were with one organization, a corporation, and another one was trying to also, they were all at the same time trying to build computer networks. It was in early development. And then when the concept of bridging those two things came into play, you would have incompatibilities because the procedural for communication for one was not the same as the other. So the OSI, or the Open Systems Interconnection, is a reference model. I refer to it as the what model. And what it defines through the 7 layers, as you kind of reviewed, was what do I need to do if I'm communicating from one computer component to another?
Yeah.
So, and as you're right, it's always a technical conversation. We always talk about it from, let's say, the ground up. I find maybe it will help if we look at what does the OSI do if you're standardizing on a operation. So let's take it, sending an email as an example. When we look at the OSI model, all 7 layers, let's say from top down now, we've got the application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, and physical. Okay. So you were saying, if I'm correct, what's a parallel, or how does this model work when we're thinking about a application that we can present in a clear format?
Yeah, just something to draw a parallel between, because that reading is so dense.
Okay, so let's send an email. Let's use the OSI from a perspective of sending an email.
Yeah, great.
So you, the human being, Kyle, I'm assuming, you are going to send an email and you interface with your email software, right? So that is, let's call it the human interaction with layer 7. So you're basically interacting with the application. So you start there, you assemble your email, you type in your subject line, all the body of the email, pick your text, maybe you're putting an attachment there. So that's your part of it. From the point you hit, let's say, send on that email, what happens next is ascending through the model, the layers of the model, you go from application to presentation. The purpose of the presentation layer is it now needs to take your email and break it into pieces so that the recipient, let's say you're sending an email to me, so that my email software can reassemble it.
So like the body and the attachment.
All of that. Yeah, absolutely. Body, attachment, what the formats are, what the size, text, italics, whatever. It has to describe that because your software, my software might not be the same. But from a perspective of, can I describe to your software what's going on? You can. And that's where the presentation layer comes in. So we go on from application to presentation. Now that you've hit send, I also now have to create a session. And that session is where your computer starts the process of finding me as the recipient.
Yeah, that's like the path between our machines.
Yes. So it establishes the path, it establishes the communication, it keeps and actually manages that session in general. So establishing communication, monitoring and managing, and even ending that communication. That's the job of the session layer. From the session, we now have to put it into a format that we send that data through the network. We call this the transport layer. In other words, I've got a continually what statement. What do I got to do? Well, now what do I need to do? I need to send that data from you need to send that data from your position to my position. So that was where the transport layer comes in, because it now has to establish the data format that it's going to put that material into and transmit it across the network. Well, since I brought up the network, this is that part now. If you and I are not in the same organizational network, or even if we are, the network layer comes in, or layer 3 comes in, that it has to identify logically and physically how to get that to us. So let's say you're in your office and I'm in my office. We're in different states. We need to route through different networks for that email to get from your machine to mine. So that's where the network layer comes in. It communicates and knows how it's physically going to get from point to point.
So yeah, it makes me think of like trace routes, if you've ever done those.
Yeah, trace. That's an absolutely perfect example. A trace route is showing you the path that data has taken from your start point to the destination. And like you said, a trace route will show you every single network that it went through. So what's happening is you took your email, it's gone through those layers, and the data network layer, layer 3 now, is attaching that information onto your email. In other words, your IP address. It needs to know where are you, what network are you in, and where are you going. And that continues down when you even get into layer 2, the network layer or the data link layer. So from the network layer to the data link layer, what we're doing is we're adding more discrete identity. So we had at network, we had IP address. When we get to data link, we also have now MAC address. Finally, now that we have all of that assembled, ready to go, we get into the physical layer. And in the physical layer, all of what you've done gets broken all the way down into ones and zeros. And this is where it gets converted into, let's say, electrical pulses for copper, light pulses for fiber, and even radio waves for wireless to get that communication going. So that's the, let's say, ascension of what you did from a simple creating an email, what that OSI did to that information to get it ready to transfer from your computer over to mine. So now that we've done that, guess what happens next?
Well, we got to put it back together.
We got to put it back together. Yeah. So the OSI works on a ascension and then a assembly. So you just tore everything down, and then when it gets on my side, it builds it all back up.
Yeah. So not only did I have the method to get there, but I also have the instructions to put it back together.
Absolutely. Let's say another way of thinking about it is, let's say you had a building in a city and you wanted to move that building to a different city. The OSI is basically the process of how do I disassemble that building, label every brick with destination and location, transport it to the other city, and then rebuild the building from that information.
Yeah, that's a great summary.
Okay. And that's basically the OSI. This is the what do we need to do to move data from one point to the other. Hopefully that helps.
No, very much so. Thank you.
Excellent.